nightclubs, and appearing on some of the network TV shows. He appeared at Lurlene's earlier this month and should be coming back to Chicago around Thanksgiving. Here's Johnny Hartman to sing now for our people, The More I See You.
You're probably more familiar with this tune, being done as a ballad. Well, I had the pleasure of recording it on one of my earlier albums, and we gave it this little bit of a beat, and this is the way it came out. The more I see you, the more I want you. Somehow this feeling just grows and grows. With every sigh, I become more mad about you, more lost without you, and so it goes. Can you imagine how much I love you? The more I see you, as years go by, I know the only one for me can only be you. My arms won't free you, my heart won't cry. Look out! The more I see you, the more I want you. Somehow this feeling just grows and grows. With every sigh, I become more mad about you, more lost without you, and so it goes. Can you imagine how much I love you? The more I see you, as years go by, I know the only one for me can only be you. My arms won't free you, my heart won't try. Can you imagine how much I love you?
The more we see of that brother, the better. For that reason, we're going to see some more of him before the show's over. Recently, a park was named in memory of Nat King Cole. The Chatham-Avalon Park Community Organization was responsible for this. Our people wanted to know more about the work of this great organization, so we invited its president, Milton Lamb, to tell us about it. Just what is the Chatham-Avalon Park Organization?
Chatham-Avalon Park Community Council is a community organization that was organized in the 50s for the purpose of preserving and conserving the Chatham community.
Well, what kinds of things have you done other than what...
Other than name of park?
Yes.
Well, we've been involved in a number of things. Primarily, we are vitally concerned with the buildings in the Chatham community and maintaining good buildings, and we're concerned with the streets, the litter, and the performance of the various city agencies in carrying out the work that we pay taxes for.
About how many people are involved in this?
In the community
Yes.
itself? There are approximately 10,000 people involved in the work of the Chatham Council.
Are they all members of the council?
Every citizen who lives within Chatham has the right to pay $3 a year for membership.
Do you have a fairly complete...
Fairly good. We're increasing every day.
That's amazing. Well, Chatham has an identity, in many minds, being the, or one of the, black middle-class enclaves. How does the organization feel about this kind of a label?
We don't mind being middle class so long as we don't lose our identity with those who are less fortunate. We do everything that we can to try to instill in the minds and the attitudes of people who do not fit into this middle class category, the notion that they too can accomplish, and they can have the same things that we have for the most part. We try very diligently to impress upon young people that we have the opportunity to talk with who are not fortunate enough to own some of the $150,000 homes in Chatham, the notion that by pursuing the educational process, as my grandmother used to say, getting something up here that nobody can take from you, we try to encourage that attitude among young people, both black and white.
Well, do you feel any stigma with this? I know that I have talked with others that feel just a little bit guilty about being even called middle class. They almost wish they didn't have so much luck.
We don't feel any guilt. I think it depends on what one does after having become middle class. I think that our community people are as vitally concerned with people who have not attained a middle class status as the people who are poor people.
Are you integrated in the organization?
Well, in the organization, yes. In the community, if you can say that a community of 90% approximately, or 90% plus black, and the balance being white, is an integrated community. To that extent, we are.
That's a very nice balance. Do you feel that you've been able to achieve most of your goals? I know you're having, or at least you've had, some kind of a fight with a couple of major outfits. What is it, Greyhound and Shell?
Yes, our fight has been with the Shell Oil Company, and that fight, I'm happy to report, has been resolved. It concerned the 79th and South Park location, the southeast corner specifically, where some businesses were demolished so that Shell might build a Shell service station. On Monday evening of this week, we reached an agreement, and on that site will go a branch library.
You mean that this is what you wanted, and somebody else wanted to put a service station?
That's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you having any other big fights with anybody now?
There's always the possibility. We don't pick fights for the sake of fighting. We do what we think needs to be done to preserve the character of the community in which we live.
What do you mean by that? What is this
Well,
character?
for instance, to give you an idea, a couple of years ago, there were some builders who contemplated putting two 17-story high-rises right in the middle of a residential section of the community. And, of course, this is completely out of character with the rest of the homes around there. And our council went to battle, and luckily, again, we won that battle. Instead of two 17-story high-rises, we will have an additional park.
That's black power.
That's power of some sort.
What about this park that was named Nat King Cole Park? Why? How did you do it? And where is it located, sure enough, exactly?
Well, the council had been involved in a struggle for a park in the Chatham community for a number of years. The struggle was finally came to an end in 1964, I believe, with the Park District consenting to buy and use one block of land along 85th Street between 85th and 86th Street and South Park Avenue. And the Nat King Cole Park, of course, came into existence as a result of it. However, Nat King Cole Park name took longer to get from the Park District than it took us to get the park. We petitioned for the name in early 1965. In November of 1967, the Park District finally thought it was a splendid idea after asking us to have some other groups submit names.
Well, I can say to you that it's certainly a real pleasure to see someone is really making this black power work successfully. Congratulations, and thank you for being with our people.
Thank you, Jim.
Here's Ramona now to tell us what's happening this week in Chicago.
Jim, we want to lead off with congratulations for Phil Curran's Afro Arts Theater, the only black theater in Chicago with a program that explores the entire range of black culture: music, visual arts, dance, and poetry. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 3947 South Drexel Boulevard. Interested in judo, karate, or fencing, co-ed swimming, musical gymnastics, and body conditioning? This is just a part of the schedule at the Wabash Avenue YMCA, 3763 South Wabash Avenue. The American Friendship Club's International Banquet Ball is being held this Saturday night at the Conrad Hilton in the Grand Ballroom. It will feature an international show taking in the Pacific Islands, Mexico, Latin America, and the West Indies, as well as the sound and rhythm of Africa. It will highlight the 10th Annual Friendship Day, the first Saturday in August, at which time club members and volunteers will give out 25,000 fresh flowers and brochures on friendship. Ella Fitzgerald is at the College Inn, at the Sherman House. Red Fox is at Mr. Kelly's. Chicago author Ron Fair's new play, The Emperor's Parade, opens tomorrow at Baird Hall, 615 West Wellington. That's it, Jim.
Thank you, Ramona. Say, have you gotten your Where to Call guide? It has answers to all kinds of difficult questions to answer. Questions like, well, if you have a problem with trying to get a job, or if someone's hurt or sick, or if you have a need for something, information about something wrong in the house or in the street. You can get yours for the asking. Just call 588-1186, and the Action Line girls will take your name and address and see to it that you get your copy in the mail. It's made available through the courtesy of Illinois Bell Telephone Company. That number again, 588-1186. Be sure to get this new Our People car sticker. Write to Our People, Box 1100, Chicago 6069041. Or if it's more convenient, stop by the Chicago Daily Defender or on South Michigan, or the new Chicago Free Press on South Dearborn. Put the Our People sticker in that window right now. Not right this minute, but as soon as we're off the air. I wonder how many of the graduates of DeSable High School remember Johnny from the time that he attended their school. Well, he hasn't changed. He is still the same Johnny, and he's just finished starring in an hour-long television special in Sydney, Australia. Here's Johnny now with his own special arrangement of On a Clear Day.
Thank you very much, Jim, for having us on your show. We enjoyed it very much. So on behalf of myself, the Vernell Fournier Trio, we'd like to leave you with this bit of advice. On a clear day, stop and look around you, and you'll see who you are. On a clear day, nothing will astound you, and the glow of your being outshines every star you'll be a part of. Every mountain, sea and shore, you can hear from far and near a world you never heard before. On a clear day, you can see forever and evermore. There, on a clear day, stop and look around you, and you'll see exactly who you are. On a clear day, nothing will astound you, and the glow of your being outshines every star you feel part of. Every mountain, sea and shore, you can hear from far and near a world you never heard before. On a clear day, on a clear day, you can see forever and ever and evermore. You can see forever and ever and evermore. Let's go home, fellas. You can see forever and ever and evermore. Oh.
Brother John, one of the best voices in the business. Former Governor Otto Kerner twice vetoed the stop-and-frisk legislation passed by the Illinois legislature. A new Supreme Court ruling in this area makes it likely that the latest bill passed by the state legislature will be signed into law by Governor Sam Shapiro. Our next guest, Senator Richard Newhouse, one of the four brothers serving in the Illinois Senate, voted against this legislation. Why, Dick?
Stop-and-frisk legislation is a step in the wrong direction. First of all, the Supreme Court rendered a decision which has been interpreted as saying that in order to follow this decision, all states should enact a stop-and-frisk law. Nothing is further from the truth. The Supreme Court, as a matter of fact, handed down a decision that takes up some 22 pages. It carefully delineates the kind of conduct that falls within the scope of stop-and-frisk. There is no way in which you can write a law that would embody the Supreme Court decision. Having rendered a decision, the Supreme Court now stands in a posture where it has ruled on a single case with a single set of facts. A change in any one of those facts may bring forth another 22-page decision with other kinds of guidelines. So it's impossible, first of all, to write the kind of law that would conform to the Supreme Court decision. Secondly, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary because as soon as the Supreme Court renders a decision, it becomes a part of the common law.
Yeah.
It's not simply a decision, it is the common law. Now, thirdly, it's unwise. And let me tell you why it's unwise. In this day and at this time, when feelings have been highly exacerbated, when emotions are running high, the worst thing that can happen in a community is to have a kind of law on the books that is susceptible to abuse, and this one is. Now, my experience has been, and the experience of my community has been, that we have not yet reached the level of professionalism in law enforcement where the kind of judgment can be exercised that is demanded of a person under stop-and-frisk circumstance. Let me explain what I mean by that. A police officer stops one on the street or observes some demeanor which in his own interpretation would compel him to say, hold the phone, let me see what this is all about. Now, the court decisions already say that if one is acting suspiciously, or if a crime has been committed, or if there's reason to believe a crime is about to be committed, this is an instance in which a policeman has a right to arrest, not stop, to arrest. Place a man under arrest, do whatever needs to be done. And no recourse can be taken against him under those circumstances. Now, what we have here is a law that says we may stop, hold, interrogate a person. It isn't stop and frisk. Stop and frisk is humiliating.
Well, could a...
Let me spell this out, Jim.
Yeah.
It's humiliating. You're driving along, someone stops you, you get out of your car, you put your hands up against the car, they pat you down, go through the trunk, and all the rest of it. This is a demeaning kind of thing. Now, the likelihood of an explosion occurring as a consequence of this kind of conduct is extremely high. All right, but we've got it now. We've got the law. What do we do? Well, first of all, we're going to have to make certain that the kind of dire consequences which I predicted in fighting this bill would not happen. We have to make certain that our officers get the kind of training that they get, that they be encouraged to learn the community, to learn who the people are in the community, to begin to empathize with the kinds of things that they see in the community, to know the problems, in short. This is very difficult because...
Is there any hope that we're going to get that kind of an officer, though? I mean,
well,
you're talking about a great deal of education on the part of some of our officers. If you're expecting them to empathize and expecting them to know the people in the community, guys riding around in cars just having a very impersonal relationship with the people, would you think that relationship is adequate?
No. And as a matter of fact, I see some hope down the line. It would be my feeling that in the absence of this law, that such training could come about a great deal faster, because we wouldn't then be in a position where some officers who are not really, who shouldn't be on the force, feel compelled to use this law as a license to abuse people. And that's the problem. Now, given the law and the fact that this is possibly going to happen, the training process is going to be a good deal more difficult.
Well, what could one of our people do if they did feel they were abused in this? They were obviously, in other words, not in the act of doing something that should encourage this kind of action on the part of the officer.
Jim, I could say a lot of nice words about what is provided for the protection of the citizen. As a practical matter, brother, you can forget it. If you're alone in an automobile, the testimony lies between the arresting officer and the person who's been arrested. And in most cases, the kind of abuses about which I speak will take place when there is one person. Yeah. Now, when you get more than one person, you do have some witnesses, and there is ostensibly some recourse. Without casting aspersions on the department, I think the department is a good department.
Yes.
But the facts of life are that an internal investigation means that I am going to report on my brother. And you have a pretty good idea how this turns out.
Right. Well, you said you had some hope for down the line, and you were looking for something better in the future. What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for this. I think there are a large number and a growing number of police officers who now recognize that we must talk about law and order and justice. And the third element is extremely important. Now, if you take a look at the background of our people, and I'm going to use your title now,
Yeah.
The facts of life are that law and order have not meant justice. In my hometown in Louisville, Kentucky, for example, if I were downtown shopping as a child and I wanted a drink of water or a hot dog, the law required that I leave the downtown area because there was no black ownership of facilities there, and either go home or to the black neighborhood in order to get a drink of water or to eat a meal. This is law and order, but it isn't justice.
Yes.
Now, in my community, and your community, I take it, the concept of law and order has excluded justice over a long period of time the same way. And somehow we have to begin to reconcile these two things. I see police officers now who are beginning to recognize that the job is a good deal more sensitive than having to make X number of arrests, than having to take people out of crowded circumstance, not taking into consideration that crowded circumstance, and doing to them the kinds of things that wouldn't be done to people in uncrowded areas.
Well, I'm glad that you do have the optimism that you've shown. I hope that our people will not have a stop and frisk that's going to hurt them more than that's going to help them. Thank you so much for being with our people, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
A few years ago, novelist and essayist Jimmy Baldwin wrote an article in the New Yorker magazine. It was called A Letter to My Nephew. A short while later, this was put in book form. It was called in The Fire Next Time. Since that time, though, Baldwin has written many other novels. He has talked increasingly about the problem of white people getting themselves together. We visited with him recently and asked him how he felt about the questions that whites have been directing to him about our people.
More than anything else?
Well, white people are always asking, if I may say so, the same questions all of the time. There's a vast amount of energy one expends fighting through something. Now, when a white man asks you, what do you think of black power, for example, or what do you think of guns, or what do you think of intermarriage, or what do you people want? I've been doing it so long that I can recite the questions in my sleep.
Yes.
And what is at the basis of these questions, what makes them so difficult to answer, is that he's not asking a real question. He isn't asking what is really on his mind. The assumptions on which all these questions are based are completely dishonest. And what one has to do is really, in effect, ignore the question, because otherwise you go out of your mind, and answer the question he has not asked. What he really means, what he really is asking, whether or not he knows it. He's saying, it wasn't so bad. You didn't mind being emasculated. You didn't mind having your children sold. You didn't mind seeing your brother lynched. it wasn't as bad as you say it is, and I'm not that bad, am I? And you're not really going to do anything about it, are you? You're not going to upset the world in which I live, and you're not going to do to me what you know, what I have done to you, are you? And, I'm not interested in killing anybody, I just want to do my thing, live my life, see my friends, my people, do my work, I don't have any need to hate anybody for any reason. But white people are uptight. A black cat can get very angry, and he can burn a city down, and I'm capable, I know, of committing murder. But I'm not capable of hating anybody. I'm not capable, of hating anybody's child. And this is not really what white people feel. It's something deeper than hatred. And it's deeper even than fear. It is something, I can't find a name for it. It is something psychotic. Something has to have gone terribly wrong with a man.
Is this something, Jim, that has also gotten to our people, for an example, to our young people?
I don't think any of our young people, though they are very vehement, and white people are very frightened of the way they look and sound. They always have been frightened of the way we look and sound, whether we were wearing a tie, and with conked hair, or an African robe. They've always been afraid of black people.
You speak of fear, though. Do white people have a special kind?
They have a kind of fear which I can't get my finger on. I really can't. It's not the same fear that I have, when I'm facing a white cop, or find myself in any strange white situation. I know all the terrors that I've been through, and it's a very literal terror. It's a terror of death. But what white people are afraid of is much, much harder to name. Obviously my 10-year-old child, is not a menace to anybody,
Yes.
But they're terrified of him. So terrified of him that they won't let him, use the restroom on the highway. They don't want him to go to school. They've even arrested, as you know, children, black children in this country, no more than 10 or 8, for rape.
Yes.
Now this is a psychosis. This is a sickness, and it has really nothing at bottom to do with black people. It has to do with white people's relationship to themselves and to each other. We happen to be the victims and the targets because, in some way, in the white Protestant Puritan mind, black people were invented to act out the sexual fantasies and unimaginable fantasies of white people.
Well, this is something that has apparently been a long time. Is there a way out? Is there something that we can do, our people can do, to help this cat with this big fear he's got?
Well, one of the things that has really begun to happen, which of course has gotten white people uptight too. There's no way to please them in the generality,
Yes.
But I was watching something. I don't know Chicago very well, but I was watching something yesterday when I was walking on the south side, and I was just watching, walking, talking with various people. And I was very struck by the way the brother treats the brother. It's not the way that we did when I was a kid in Harlem, when black people were always fighting each other.
Yeah.
Something has happened in the ghetto. I have no word for this either, but it's very important if I read it right, and I know what I saw. The kind of respect and the kind of affection, even the kind of love that they deal with, what they give to each other. It's something I've not seen before, really, in this country. Because the great effort in this country has always been, to destroy my self-respect, because I'm black, my respect for myself, because I'm black. And that automatically destroys my respect for you, because you're black, And in that kind of frustration, we always took it out on each other. But that has begun to change. And what I'm really trying to get at is that I think that this generation, I don't mean mine, but the younger generation, has really managed, and the good Lord knows how, to walk out of the white man's frame of reference And where they're going, they may not know, you know. And that is partly up to our generation of black people, you know, to deal with that and to be their witnesses if we can do no more than that, and to be with them, you know.
Well, this is, I would say, I look at it as kind of a revolution, at least.
Oh, it is. It is.
If this is a revolution, where should it go? I mean, is there a good place for it?
Well, it has to go. It can only go, it would seem to me, in one direction. We're not all however many millions of us there are all going to pack up and leave here, you know. And furthermore, I don't think we should. I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be driven out of a country that our fathers and our fathers' fathers paid for. No matter what the mayor of your city and the governor of whatever state may think.
And that I just have to interrupt there. Do you know much about the city government in Chicago?
Well, no, not in detail. But
that's interesting, because the fact that you don't know the details would give you a position where that you could give us a fresh approach. How do you see it as a person coming into Chicago, just taking a glance at the way we live in Chicago?
It's a hard question to answer. But I'll tell you one thing. I'll say this first, and I'll try to answer your thing. You walk into any city, let's say, all right, you walk into Chicago.
Right.
And a great deal can be seen with the naked eye, you know.
Right. In
the same way, for example, standing on the streets of Freetown and Sierra Leone, no matter what the British say, no matter what they say about how happy their possessions were, all you have to do is walk through the streets of Freetown and you can see it with your eyes, what the conquerors thought of the conquered. And you walk along Chicago's South Side, and I don't care how many liberals you have in Chicago, you can tell by looking at the streets, looking at the faces, looking at the children, looking at the houses, what Chicago really means to do with its black population. I don't care what they say. The song says, you know, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do.
Well, from the point of view of a person making this judgment, what kind of hope do you leave with us? When you leave Chicago, what do you leave here with in your mind about what you would like to see?
I think that it's only a guess. I think that my hope is always, obviously, with the young. And as I said before, I think that they have walked out of, in the main, the white man's frame of reference. I don't think they judge themselves according to that standard anymore. I don't think they ever will again, either. I think that, you say hope. The great hope, you see, is that this generation, what we must not allow to happen is for this generation to be slaughtered. And one's got to bear in mind that there's more than one way for a generation to be slaughtered. They can be slaughtered in the streets with tanks, with guns. They can be thrown into jail. They can be, as our generation in so many ways was, as previous generations have been, demoralized, emasculated, beaten down. I think it is up to their elders to force the situation to such an extent that this has to be prevented.
You mean that politically?
I mean that politically.
We don't have any economic power right now.
We don't have any economic power right now, and if they have their way, we never will. But we do have a great deal of political power, especially in the cities. And it seems to me that the machinery, the political machinery, which is responsible for this vast corruption, not only in Chicago, up and down this nation, the streets of every city in this nation are a scandal. And all the cities of this nation, you know, are run for the benefit of a handful of people. And that is a power which has to be broken.
You think politically is the way
power,
to do that?
Yes, it's the only way to do it, as far as I can see now, because we cannot really, literally, you know, to tell it like it is, we can't really do it with guns. It'd be a mistake to try it, you know. But we can, you know, use our weight to immobilize the machine, to force the machine to respond to what has to be done, not only for black people in this country, but for the country if it's going to live at all.
Well, you're obviously saying that a violent way is not the way, but violence itself has its own category.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you feel about the difference in white violence and black violence.
Well, as I tried to indicate before, it seems to me, and I'm not trying to, I'm not, this may sound racist, but I don't care. What I'm
It's all right to be a racist in Chicago. Yes,
I know.
You can't be popular unless you are.
It's different in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I've known some very violent black people, but it was comprehensible violence. It was rage. It was pain. White violence has a great, has a quality of being completely impersonal. The sheriff with those dogs and those children, it was a kind of eerie, impersonal violence, which the most vivid metaphor which comes to my mind is the Third Reich. The same kind of depersonalization. It's incredible that a man can put a cattle prod to a woman's breast, a woman, he's married, and go home and eat dinner with his wife, and go home and go to bed with his wife, and he spent a day beating on black women. I don't understand how this, I don't understand that man. I don't understand that kind of person. I don't understand where he lives. In a certain way, I don't even know if he lives. It's a kind of wickedness, to use a very weak word, which I find unimaginable. And my major concern in all this, and I got great limits. I don't want blood in the streets, and not because I want the Republic to be tranquil. I just don't want two things to happen. I don't want those black boys and girls destroyed. And I don't want those black boys and girls ever to reach the spiritual level of a Senator Eastland or a Sheriff Clark or a Governor Wallace. Because that is worse than death.
Yes. Well, in that same area, so many of our black people who have achieved some level of political strength or some level of other representation for other black people, seemingly, at least by some school boards, have failed to really make a significant change. I'm thinking in terms of the local black politician. I'm thinking in terms of the black man who is in a position to at least bring some weight to bear, to make a change. Even the black policeman, let us say.
I'm afraid, the trap the American Republic placed black people in was very cunning and very efficient. It's on this level that you can't tell a black man by the color of his skin. In a country which penalizes black people so harshly and awards white people so handsomely, it's inevitable that some black cats would be working for the man. One simply got to face that. When I was a kid in Harlem, we said, we never sent for the cops. But we said, if you got to send for a cop, make sure it's a white one.
I think I understand that very well.
I know you do.
Well, we have, our people have been addressing themselves more and more to police and community relations. If you had control, let's say, of the police academy in Chicago, how would you train? What would you tell these guys? What kind of philosophy would you give them when they go into our part of town?
In the first place, well, all right, okay. First place, if I had charged the Chicago Police Academy, I'd make sure that some of those cats read some books. And I don't mean Mickey Mouse, that they had some sense that the world is not, the world is bigger than this table.
Yes.
And that there are more people in the world than him and his wife and his child. That's one thing I would do, because part of the vice is just pure, simple ignorance.
Yes.
This is a country which rewards ignorance very handsomely, too. But the trouble with the police in the ghetto is that they are working for a power structure which has placed you in the ghetto. They're not there to protect the lives of black people. They don't know anything about the lives of black people. They're there to protect white property. That's the only reason, really. You know, one's placed in a concentration camp and he's the keeper. Now, we're talking seriously about policing communities. Then it's the black people of the community who have to do the policing at this stage in American history, because white people are incapable of doing it.
Yes.
They cannot do it.
Of course, we've been killing each other for a little while, too, and that doesn't help matters.
We have not been killing each other at the rate at which we have been being killed.
Yeah, yes,
No.
that's very
No.
true.
I'm not at all afraid of, you know, of that. You know, even some of those street gangs
Yes.
know much more about their peers and about their elders too than any white cop knows, and can cool it much faster.
Yes.
This is what Malcolm could do. That's why everyone misses Malcolm so much. You know, they said he was a racist and a fanatic and, you know, a horrible man while he lived, but we miss him now.
Yes, we do.
Because Malcolm was the only person who could do that. But we have to now insist that we police our own communities, because it's going to get worse with every. The American summer is presently going to last all year. You know,
It's getting longer.
it's getting longer. It's going to get much longer.
Well, I know that when you're interviewed, like this one, almost always someone says something about your writing. I'm going to leave that to someone else, except for one question about it. You have been writing for somebody, directing it towards somebody. Who is that somebody?
I'll tell you the truth. I never said this in public before. I have a baby sister. She was born the day my father died. Our father died. And everybody has this thing. When she was a very little girl, I did my thing. I addressed myself to her because I knew that she would know if I were lying. If that answers you.
It does, very well. One final thing. Everybody yells about freedom. Freedom, after interviewing many people, apparently means something different to everybody. What does it mean to you?
What does freedom mean to me? Freedom means simply that I am here, you know, in the world. I can do some things I can't do others. I can go so far, I can't go further. You know, everyone is limited. My heart, mind, soul, you know, my possibilities. And I'm not going to live 1,000 years. Freedom to me means that while I'm here on earth, let me do my thing. Let me go my way. Let me find out who I am, what I can be, what I can do. Let me find, you know, who I want to be with. Let me raise my child so he can be whatever he can be. Don't hem me in. Don't give me definitions. Don't load me down with labels and load my kid down with labels. Let us go. I can take care of my kid if you leave me alone. I can take care of my woman. I can take care of my house. I can take care of anybody I love. Leave me alone. Let me do it. That's all.
Perhaps the first definition of freedom that I thought was my own. You are someone well worth knowing. I think you know yourself. And the more everybody gets to know themselves, the more we as black people get to the point where that we have someone to direct ourselves toward, the closer we're going to come toward that goal. It's been great having you with our people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A swinging brother. Credit buying is one of the most important considerations facing our people. Harold Washington is state representative from the 26th Senatorial District, and he has been in the forefront of the fight for legislative credit reform measures. Now, here's your chance to participate by calling in your questions, any questions that you have for our guest. Just call 539-3484. That number again is 539-3484, and we will direct them toward our guest. Harold, I have seen, and you have seen, and I suppose all of our people have seen credit in our community in some forms that are almost in defiance of imagination. Is that why you are so concerned about credit reform?
You put your finger on it, Jim. That's the main reason that I am concerned. As a matter of fact, it's one of the main reasons why I originally ran for a seat in the Illinois House of Representatives. I felt that someone, somewhere, must concern themselves with the plight of what I consider to be disadvantaged and people who have been completely and totally ignored by the laws of the state of Illinois insofar as consumer credit buying was concerned. And so when I went to Springfield, I went down there with a mission, in a sense, and that was to do whatever I could to reform or help to reform the consumer credit buying laws of the state. Fortunately, my party, and because to a certain extent my background, permitted me to become chairman of a subcommittee which dealt with this whole question of consumer credit buying. And I had a chance to listen to hundreds of witnesses, primarily and almost exclusively witnesses from the ghetto, black people, Puerto Ricans, poor whites also. And the stories were all the same. They were oversold. They were sold inferior material. Even the very loose laws that we had were violated in many cases in terms of these people. They were garnishing on their jobs, or as we say in our parlance, they got a brick on their check. Many of them had gone through bankruptcy. The family problem attendant to that kind of financial crisis was terrific. Many of the families were totally disrupted. Husband and wife couldn't get along. They wound up in the divorce courts or the family court. All of these social problems which flowed strictly from the fact that, one, the people in the ghetto, to a great extent, simply did not know how to function in this complicated economy which was geared toward, in the state of Illinois, geared toward protection of the merchandiser rather than the consumer. They simply didn't know how to function within that given society. And two, no one was making an effort to curtail the unethical, if not illegal, practices of many, not all, but many merchandisers. The problem was simply fantastic. It is still fantastic, but fortunately we now have on both the federal and state level certain laws which I think will ameliorate to a great extent, won't solve, but ameliorate to a great extent the seriousness of consumer credit buying and the foibles and pitfalls that people fall into because of ignorance or unscrupulousness on the part of merchants.
You mean this gives us some redress? We can do something now about it if we get a bad credit deal?
We can do something about it if we pay attention to what's been done to help us do something about it. Unfortunately, the thing that disturbs me is that many, many people simply will not pay attention to what they're doing. We are oversold in the various mediums of communication, as you well know. Tremendously oversold.
Yes.
We want cars, we want televisions, we want all the things that everyone else wants. And many of us simply cannot afford them from a practical economic point of view, and we must understand this. Many times, even though we buy what we want, it's inferior material. It's overpriced. But these laws, I think, if people will pay attention to these laws and be governed by the thought and the concern that's behind them, I think we can help solve this problem.
Well, tell us what the law really does say. What does it mean for?
Well, on the federal level, as of during the month of May, the president signed what is called the Truth in Lending Bill, or a federal consumer protective law. It will go into effect June of 1969. The rules, regulations pursuant to that law have not been worked out, and it won't be for some time. But once this law is in effect, it will do a great deal for the people of the state of Illinois. But fortunately, we now have in Illinois sufficient consumer credit laws, or laws to protect the person who buys on time, to make certain that people will be protected. So we don't really, as much as some states, need the federal laws. But in the state of Illinois, we had a complete overhauling of our retail installment credit buying laws during the last session, which was a year ago. They did several things. They put interest ceilings.
You mean now that when I go in, they can only charge me so much interest before they'll be illegal?
That's correct.
How do I know how much that is?
These must be published by law. I could sit here and recite them, it would do no good.
No, but
they must be published.
They must be published.
That's correct.
Right.
Believe it or not, prior to the passage of these laws, we had a merchant could charge any interest rate he wanted if you bought a consumer item being a stove, a car,
well, what do we do when we find out he doesn't publish them?
if he doesn't publish them, I would say, first of all, don't trade with him under any means, and secondly, report him to the proper authorities.
Well, it sounds to me like the understanding of these laws is something that almost has to be left to those who deal with it every day to a great extent. Where is it that we can go to get this kind of information?
There are any number of places, but I would suggest as the primary source for information, and if they can't give it, they are readily available and qualified to refer you to the correct place, is the Chicago Human Relations Commission here in Chicago.
Just give them a call on the telephone?
Give them a call on the telephone. If they can't resolve your question on the phone, you, of course, can go down to their office. You can also go to the Attorney General's office at 160 North LaSalle. They have a fraud and complaint department, which is being handled by Attorney General Clark, who, as you know, is a candidate for United States Senator. And he is doing a mammoth job in enforcing the Illinois State Consumer Fraud Act. If you don't want to go there, you can go to the State's Attorney's office at 2600 in California, to their fraud and complaint department. Many of the local political offices, of course, have some expert readily available who can handle their problems. The Legal Aid Bureau is another source of information, but I would suggest the Human Relations Commission.
Well, if they're still in doubt about, anybody's in doubt about where to call, then they can always call on our question line, and we'd be glad to give them that direction.
Definitely. This is an excellent public service here that you're doing, Jim.
Thank you. We're getting some questions now for you, Ed. I'm sure you can take care of right away. The first one is from Mrs. Johnson, who says, do you feel that churches inform consumers about pitfalls, should inform their consumers about the pitfalls of credit buying?
In terms of our community, I would say that that is one of the best sources. I would suggest to the churches in our community that they train an expert in the field of consumer buying among their parishioners, their congregation, and have those persons available to help their parishioners and members of their congregation to solve some of their consumer credit problems. That's an excellent suggestion from Mrs. Johnson.
Here's one from Mr. Ulysses Ricks. Why are men responsible for women's debts if the man is not present when the contract is signed?
I think what the questionnaire is asking is, why is a husband responsible for the wife's debts?
Yes.
And the law is simply this, that under the family expense law, if a wife purchases a necessity, which covers practically anything, purchases a necessity and she doesn't pay for it, then the husband is responsible. Of course, it works the other way around, too. The wife is responsible for the debts of the husband in that case. The simple reason being that the man is supposed to be the breadwinner of a family, and unfortunately, some men simply don't do the kind of providing that they should, and women on occasion have had to go out and, of course, and purchase things on credit, simply because their husband didn't provide those things. And so our family expense statute provides that where one spouse purchases a necessity while they're living as a family, then the other spouse is responsible.
Well, suppose this isn't a necessity, and suppose it is excessive.
Well, the concept of necessity is so broad that there are very few things that are excluded. Of course, under the present laws, consumer credit laws, one must wait 30 days under a default before you can, of course, sue the other spouse for non-payment.
That means that you have a 30-day period there where you have to wait before you can get free of it.
Right.
Here's a question from Roger Green. If you didn't pay a first card bill and you continue to buy things, can they make a wage assignment on your check?
No, they can't make a wage assignment on your check. You see, the only way they can assign your check is that if you sign a wage assignment in the beginning.
I see.
So in those credit card situations, that is not done.
Here's another question that has to do with something you, I think, got into a minute ago. Can a person be held responsible for furniture or any other item bought before a separation?
You mean a family situation if furniture is bought?
Yes,
and there's a separation.
There's a legal separation.
Under the family expense law, as I said before, generally speaking, both parties would be liable, yes.
Here's another question here. What is the maximum interest, this is from J. Dallin, interest that can be charged on the purchase of consumer goods per $100 per year?
Well, let's take an automobile, for example. There is a graduated interest rate schedule. The older the car, the higher the interest rate. On a new car, the interest rate is $8 per 100 per year. On a car 1 year old, it goes up to $10. A car 2 years old, it goes up to $14, and so forth.
Well, naturally, we have many, many other questions from our people, and we will be talking with you after the show and try to get answers and get these answers back to them. But as kind of a wrap-up situation, what do you think would be the most constructive advice that you could give me as a person who knows absolutely nothing about the credit-buying business, but still has to live in a world that's built and run on credit?
I would say this. If you're going to buy anything on time, take your time. Don't rush. After all, you can wait 2 or 3 days to get your television set. You can wait 2 or 3 days to get your new suit. Certainly you can wait a week or so to get your new automobile. Take your time. The second point I would make is don't hesitate to question everything that is said to you. Third, don't take any verbal commitments. Put it in writing. In other words, be from Missouri. Show you. Fourth, and perhaps the last, look at your income very, very realistically. Look at your income not in terms of what it is today, but what it will be tomorrow, and be certain that you can afford to pay your commitments as they come due. If it means sitting down and putting it on paper, do that. But don't overextend yourself. That's the main thing.
Thank you so much for being with our people tonight.
Thank you, John.
That's our people for tonight. Next week, our guests will be Oscar Brown, Jr., Norman Simon, president of University Bank, who will tell us how to shop for money. We'll talk with student representatives of Chicago State College's Afro-American organization about their special summer program with teenagers called Project Overdue. We'll find out about a man who's helping ghetto college-age men and women to go to college. We'll tour the ghetto area to see it like it is through the eyes of a patrolman who hasn't forgotten that he's black. We'd like to thank Bob Kaiser for his help on the show tonight. We'll see you at the Wall next Thursday at 9 p.m. I'm Jim Tilman.
Pre-recorded.